3 weeks ago, I wiped a perfectly functional Windows install, pointed every best Linux distro 2026 list I could find at a single machine, and discovered that most of those lists are written by people who haven't actually lived inside these systems. Not for a day, not for a week, not with real work, real deadlines, and real frustration. I tested 7 distros across 30 days, and the one that survived, the one still running on my primary machine right now, was not the one every YouTube channel and Reddit thread told me to pick. Let me show you exactly what I found, why the hype is wrong, and how to choose the right system for your life, not someone else's. Here's the problem with how Linux distros get ranked online. Almost every major list is optimizing for the wrong thing. The top results you find when you search Best Linux Distro 2026 are overwhelmingly optimized for beginners, having a smooth install experience. That's it. That's the entire evaluation criteria. Boot it up. Does the Wi-Fi work? Does it look clean? Does Spotify install in 3 clicks? 5 stars. Recommended for everyone. But that's not how you actually experience an operating system. You experience it at 11 p.m. when a Python dependency breaks and you're trying to figure out why. You experience it when you're switching between 12 browser tabs, a video call, a terminal session, and an audio editor simultaneously. You experience it 6 months in, when the initial shine has worn off and you're just trying to get things done. That's when the real character of a distro shows up. And that's the lens I used. Think about what that means for you if you're about to make a switch. The review that convinced you, the one with the polished B-roll and the clean desktop screenshots, was almost certainly written by someone who used the distro for 72 hours, maybe a week. Long enough to form a first impression, not long enough to encounter the second layer of problems. The ones that don't surface until you've actually committed. Here's what I did. I set up a dedicated test machine, a ThinkPad X1 Carbon 2022 model, which is considered well-supported Linux hardware. Not exotic, not bleeding edge, the kind of machine thousands of people actually use. I gave each distro a minimum of 3 to 4 days of real use. Not virtual machines, not side-by-side dual boots where I could retreat to comfort. Full wipe, full commitment, real workflow. Writing, development, video research, communication tools, browser-heavy work. And I kept notes. The 7 distros I tested were Ubuntu 24.04, Fedora 40, Linux Mint 21.3, Pops OS 22.04, Endeavour OS with GNOME, OpenSUSE Tumbleweed, and Zorin OS 17. That covers the major categories: Debian-based, Red Hat-based, Arch-based, and rolling versus stable release cycles. A genuine cross-section. Now, before I get into what happened, you need to understand why the recommendations you keep finding online are so consistently off target. Because it's not random. There's a structural reason for it. Before I tell you which distro actually held up, you need to understand why the recommendations you're finding are so consistently off target, because it's not an accident. The Linux content ecosystem has a specific gravity problem. The distros that are easiest to cover also tend to be the ones with the most visual polish, the most beginner-friendly marketing, and the most active communities producing promotional content. That self-reinforces. More coverage means more viewers means more coverage. And the actual working experience gets buried under aesthetics. There's also an incentive structure worth naming. A lot of Linux content creators, and I'm not throwing anyone under the bus here because I understand how this works, end up in relationships with distro communities, sponsorships, early access, official partnerships. That creates a subtle bias that's almost impossible to fully account for. When a distro sponsor is paying part of your channel revenue, your review of that distro is going to have a certain warmth to it, not necessarily dishonest, but not fully independent either. According to a 2024 analysis by the Linux Foundation, the top 3 most downloaded distros account for over 60% of all Linux desktop usage. And those are overwhelmingly the ones with the most marketing resources, not necessarily the ones that perform best in sustained use. The concentration creates a feedback loop. Popular distros get more attention, more driver support from hardware manufacturers, more Stack Overflow answers, and therefore appear more capable. Even when the underlying technical differences are smaller than people think. Here's the thing. The real differentiator between distros isn't the desktop environment. It's not whether it ships with LibreOffice pre-installed. It's not even the package manager, though that matters more than people admit. It's 2 things. How the distro handles package conflicts and dependency hell 6 months in, and how aggressively it pushes changes that break your workflow. Those 2 things will make or break your experience. Everything else is furniture arrangement. Think about that for a second. You're not going to care about the default wallpaper in February when an update breaks your audio stack and you have 30 minutes before a call. That's when distro philosophy actually matters. That's when the decision you made 6 months earlier either pays off or costs you. And the list-based reviews you read will not tell you about this. They can't. They haven't been there. All right, let me walk you through what I actually installed, what broke, what surprised me, and what's still running on my machine right now. I'll go in order of what I expected versus what I got. Ubuntu 24.04, the default choice, the safe choice. I expected it to be boring and reliable. What I got was mostly that, except for one thing that immediately irritated me: snap packages. Ubuntu's push towards Snap as a universal packaging format is now aggressive enough that several core applications install as snaps by default. And the performance difference compared to native packages is genuinely noticeable on cold launches. The Firefox Snap takes several seconds longer to open than the same browser installed natively on other distros. That's not catastrophic, but it's a daily friction that accumulates. After 4 days, I found myself doing workarounds just to get back to baseline performance. That's not a good sign. Fedora 40. I had high expectations here. Fedora has a reputation as the distro for people who want cutting-edge software without going full arch. And for the most part, it delivered. The genome implementation is clean. The Wayland support is arguably the best of any distro I tested. And the DNF package manager has gotten significantly faster in recent versions. But Fedora's release cycle is aggressive. You're looking at a new major version every 6 months, and while the upgrade paths have improved, there's still a real chance that a version upgrade will require you to troubleshoot something that was working before. For someone with a mostly stable workflow that doesn't change much, that cadence is exhausting. Fedora is excellent. It's not the distro for people who want to stop thinking about their OS. Linux Mint 21.3. This one surprised me. I expected to find it comfortable but dated. What I found was a distro that had clearly been refined by a team that actually uses their own product. The Cinnamon desktop is not flashy. It doesn't win screenshot contests. But the attention to detail in the UI, the system tray, behavior, the update manager that actually explains what each update does and flags potentially risky ones separately, reflects a philosophy of putting the user in control without overwhelming them. The hardware compatibility was flawless on my ThinkPad. Battery life was equal to or better than Windows on the same machine. If you've been in the Linux world for a while, Mint might feel like putting on a very comfortable pair of old shoes. Unglamorous. Exactly right. Pop, OS 22.04. I want to like this distro more than I do. System 76 has done genuinely innovative work with the tiling window management and the cosmic desktop that's coming. But 22.04 is starting to show its age. It's based on Ubuntu 22.04 LTS, which means the underlying packages are nearly 2 years old now. Newer hardware can run into driver gaps, and the promised Cosmic Desktop, which was supposed to be the defining reason to choose Pop over Ubuntu, has been in development for so long that the current version of Pop feels like it's been frozen in amber waiting for a future that keeps getting pushed back. The tiling shortcuts are useful once you learn them, but this is a distro in transition, and committing to it right now means inheriting that uncertainty. EndeavourOS with GNOME. This is where things get interesting. EndeavourOS is Arch-based, which means a rolling release, which means you are always running the newest version of everything, for better and worse. The install experience is genuinely more approachable than vanilla Arch, without removing the things that make Arch powerful. AUR access means your package selection is enormous. When something works on EndeavourOS, it works perfectly. When something breaks, and things will break on a rolling release eventually, you need to be the kind of person who finds debugging interesting rather than demoralizing. I found a broken update once in my testing period that required a trip to the Arch wiki to resolve. It took about 20 minutes. If that sounds fun to you, EndeavourOS is genuinely excellent. If it sounds like your nightmare, it is not the right choice. OpenSUSE. Tumbleweed. Under-discussed, seriously impressive. Tumbleweed is also a rolling release, but the OpenSUSE team runs an automated testing suite called OpenQA on every single update before it hits users. That's not a marketing claim. According to the OpenSUSE project, OpenQA runs thousands of automated tests against every snapshot. The practical result is that I had 0 update-related breakage during my entire testing period. 0. For a rolling release distro, that is remarkable. YAST, OpenSUSE's configuration tool, is either going to feel like a comprehensive control panel or an intimidating bureaucracy, depending on your personality. But if you want rolling release stability, which sounds like a contradiction but isn't here, Tumbleweed deserves a serious look. Zorin OS 17, the distro that markets itself hardest at Windows and macOS switchers. The interface mimics Windows 11 convincingly enough that non-technical family members genuinely couldn't tell the difference in a side-by-side. The Pro version adds more layout options. The core experience is smooth and well executed for what it is, a distro designed to reduce the psychological friction of switching. The problem is that once you've been on Linux for more than A few weeks, the Windows mimicking aesthetic starts to feel like you're wearing a costume. You've already learned where things are. The fake start menu stops helping and starts feeling slightly condescending. Zorin is genuinely the right answer for some people. People who need Linux, but don't want to learn Linux. For anyone else, it's training wheels you'll outgrow faster than you expect. Stay with me here, because this is where everything converges. After 30 days of living inside these systems, the distro, still running on my primary machine, is Linux Mint 21.3. Not because it's the most technically impressive, not because it won any benchmark, because it got out of my way and let me work. That's the entire evaluation. Does the OS get out of your way and let you do the thing you actually want to do? Here's how to think about this decision for yourself, depending on where you're starting from. If you are completely new to Linux, coming from Windows, not particularly interested in the technical side, just want something that works reliably, Linux Mint. Full stop. The Cinnamon Edition specifically. The learning curve is gentle, the community is patient, and the update philosophy is conservative enough that you won't find yourself troubleshooting a broken system on a Tuesday morning. If you're intermediate, you've used Linux before, you're comfortable with the terminal, you want current software without going full arch. Fedora 40. Accept the upgrade cadence as part of the deal. Back up before major version upgrades. Use it with that mindset, and it rewards you with a genuinely polished experience. If you are technical, you enjoy problem solving, and you want a rolling release that won't punish you for it. OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. It is the least discussed great distro in this category, and it deserves significantly more attention than it gets. If you want Arch power with a friendlier setup process, and you're fully prepared for the occasional maintenance session, EndeavourOS. Keep the Arch wiki bookmarked. Use it proudly. If you're specifically running newer System 76 hardware and you can wait for Cosmic to mature, give pop.os another year. The hardware integration is genuinely good and the future looks interesting. Just don't commit to it on non-System 76 hardware right now. One honest disclaimer before you make any decision based on this. If you work in an environment that requires specific enterprise software, certain versions of Adobe tools via compatibility layers, corporate VPN clients with Linux support gaps, or proprietary data analysis platforms, test your entire workflow in a live environment before committing to a full switch. The distro doesn't matter if your daily tools don't work on it. Linux compatibility has improved dramatically, but gaps still exist in specific niches. Don't let a YouTube video be the reason you blow up your work setup. Test first. Switch with evidence. Here's the thing. Nobody in the Linux community wants to say out loud, the perfect distro doesn't exist, but the right distro for you absolutely does. And the reason most people have a difficult time finding it is that they're taking advice from people who don't share their use case, their hardware, their technical tolerance, or their actual goals. The Linux ecosystem in 2026 is genuinely better than it has ever been. Steam's Proton layer has made gaming on Linux a credible option for the majority of the Steam catalog. Wayland support across distros has matured to the point where the old arguments for staying on X11 are mostly historical. Driver support from hardware manufacturers has improved significantly, particularly for AMD graphics. The reasons not to switch are fewer than they've ever been. The reasons to switch are stronger than they've ever been. But here's the principle worth holding on to. You are the administrator of your own machine, not a distro's marketing team. Not a content creator's sponsorship arrangement, not a subreddit's tribal allegiance. You, which means the right answer, is the one that serves your actual work, your actual life, your actual tolerance for maintenance. And that answer is different for everyone. I spent 30 days so you don't have to spend 3 months making the wrong choice and burning out before you find what actually works. Take the framework I laid out. Match your comfort level to the distro tier. Test it properly and give it at least 2 weeks before you decide. First impressions in Linux are often misleading in both directions. Some distros that feel rough on day 1 become invisible in the best possible way by week 2. Some that felt polished reveal friction you didn't notice until you needed something they couldn't easily provide. Your operating system should be a tool that empowers you, not a hobby project that consumes you, unless you want it to be a hobby project, in which case EndeavourOS is waiting. If this breakdown saved you some time and some headache, subscribe. I cover this kind of real-world testing regularly, not distro of the month hype cycles. And drop a comment below. Which distro are you currently on, and what made you choose it? I rate every single one. The best answers are usually in the comments, not the video.